You're listening to Francis Oblivion and the Mad Undead by J. Johnson Higgins. This audiobook edition is a Kiss the Widow production.
Chapter 14. My first frightening experience with Francis.
Journal of Adrienne Eckenrode, October 19th. Becca can be a mysterious woman in many ways sometimes. I don't so much think that she is intentionally keeping secrets from me, but she is someone for whom a lot is already behind a closed door. While she was open about some things, there were others that I had to discover through observation and, basically by accident. However, once a door was cracked, she would typically swing it open wider for me, to better explain her motivations. It was just the way she was. She did not like holding on to partial information if it made the ongoing interactions between us awkward. She showed me more than once that things on the surface for her were not as they seemed. That was one of her defining quirks, the showing, but a better one to have, I suppose. I learned that most of her secrets had a direct relation to Francis and an attempt to shield him from her life and now mine. Let me explain. When we'd first arrived at the Sienna Shore Lighthouse, I'd seen several items and objects about the property from the original owner, such as his picture, typically with who appeared to be his mother and father. Becca did not speak much about the man except in general terms, and I didn't really ask for more information at first. He was just the owner, and he was not present. The same could be said of any building we'd visited or made ourselves comfortable in. Over time, I grew more curious and wanted to know more, but before I could ask, I discovered a small postcard-sized photo album in the living room. The album was inside of the drawer of a lamp table. I wasn't looking for it, but I'd found it while looking for matches for the candles Becca had asked me to light for protection. I'd opened it. In the album, there were pictures of the lighthouse owner, a man with a dark beard and long wild hair. Further along, I'd found pictures of Becca too. I wasn't expecting to see her in the album, given that all the pictures in the house so far were of the owner's immediate family, but this piqued my curiosity and made me take a seat on the floor when I otherwise wouldn't have. I paged through them until I came across a series of pictures stashed in the back of the owner and Becca together that were progressively more intimate. There was one picture of Becca holding on tight to the owner with that giant, unmistakable smile I'd seen from time to time. I flipped to another where she was holding hands with him in a more formal setting along with 4 other individuals I hadn't seen before. They were like a fairy tale princess and a prince. I almost didn't recognize the 2 of them from how formal they looked and the way that they'd worn their hair. They must have been part of a wedding party or something. In the next picture, they were kissing, and this made me stop altogether. The world stopped too. I wondered about the scale of their relationship at that point. Who was this guy? Was this the boyfriend she'd mentioned before or someone else?
Did you find something interesting?
Becca asked from the door to my surprise, and the world began to spin again, too fast, as if to catch up from the last few moments. She must have been standing there at the door for a short time before speaking, but I hadn't noticed. Her presence caused me to automatically flip on to the next photo without really looking, and she scared the hell out of me. No, I was looking for the matches. No luck.
You'll never find them in here.
Becca started.
Matches are in the kitchen. Same drawer as the massive supply of batteries. For now, though, I have a lighter. Ta-da.
Becca flicked the lighter open, then closed it, then modeled it like I just won a prize on a game show. She went on to tease me.
Now, if I discover the real reason that we're vulnerable at this moment and none of my protection candles are lit yet is because you're in here jerking off to God knows what, I'm putting a hex on you, Adrienne.
She shook her head.
But in all seriousness, what are you doing, babe? You're acting strange.
Becca reacted almost instantly upon innocently strolling into the room and eyeing the album in my hands. I could see that some meaningful thoughts shot behind her eyes in those moments from the way she took a subtle breath and exhaled, blinking. She was surprised but not shocked. It was like she'd held on to those thoughts for a second to decide what to do with them, but ultimately decided to release them earlier than was ideal for her. She started speaking once closer to me.
His name's Icarus, by the way.
She volunteered as she crossed her arms and motioned toward the photos with only her chin.
I don't think I ever told you his name, yet the bastard is staring back at you in pretty much every corner of this house.
She spoke jovially just as before, yet I'd say that there was just a hint of insecurity and vulnerability in her voice as she tried to grin now, casually uncrossed her arms and pointed out at least 2 examples of his visage about the room. In so doing, it was like she was signaling that it was okay that I'd found and was looking in the album. It was expected, inevitable, and merely an extension of the surroundings. It was okay to be curious about the formerly nameless man. Then, she sat down on the love seat on the side closest to me as I remained seated there on the floor. Icarus? I don't meet many people with that name.
You're right. We, my friends and I, always went with Icky, and the name eventually stuck. Never Icarus, though.
So, you and Icarus were close before all of this, I take it? I asked, looking down at the next picture I'd flipped to. In it, Becca and Icarus were leaning in close to each other and both saluting the camera. Becca had a riding glove in her hand as she did. The setting appeared to be an event with lots of people behind them moving about and talking, like a convention.
Yeah, you could say that.
Becca started with a slight chuckle and looked up.
That picture was taken before we were even engaged.
She offered, shaking her head.
We just finished a performance at an out-of-state bike show in North Hermitsville. That's where we were. We had a perfect performance that day. I had fun, but we didn't stay for very long because Icky wanted to leave and get food somewhere else. After that long trip there, can you believe that? There was plenty of stuff there to choose from, lots of options that we would have been fine with, vegetarian ones that I verbally expressed that I wanted to try.
She laughed.
I'm usually the picky one, and I was fine with staying where we were. That tells you something. His mind was set that day to get the fuck out, one way or another, so we left early. I really wanted to stay and check out the other performers and some of the vendors, though. That picture was taken when we were on the way out.
Engaged? I asked.
That's correct.
Becca replied, not fully ridding herself of a grin once she'd realized what must have been on my mind to extract that one detail of her entire recollection and decide to echo it. She was maybe a little proud to have spotted my jealousy as a proxy for desire, but she didn't bask in it for too long before deciding to sit on the floor next to me and set the record straight.
But don't be disappointed, babe. There's more. We were engaged at the time, but we never actually married or took it any further. I wear a lot of rings, but not that one.
Becca held her hands out in front of her.
Things were different back then, and things are different now. We're not involved anymore.
She sighed before affectionately adding,
I want you to know that I don't want to hide these things from you. I want to tell you, and I want you to feel like you can ask. It's just, sometimes my personal stuff is not like most people's, that's all.
Becca finished. How so? I asked. Everything she said so far sounded normal to me. Well, normal in the sense that these things can happen to normal people. But then her statements took a supernatural turn I didn't expect.
Well, I didn't even know that Francis was hunting me until after Icky and I had stopped seeing each other, but looking back, I realized that he must have been drinking Icky dry for months before we split. He did it so that he could watch me through Icky's eyes. Then he tried to separate us to isolate me, and it worked. I fell right into his trap. By the time I knew about him or what he was doing, it was already too late. Once we were separated, I could no longer protect him. Icky used to wear a necklace just like the one I gave to you for protection.
Becca reached over and touched the pentacle around my neck.
He'd stopped wearing it after we broke up, gave it back to me. Once it couldn't protect him, Francis killed him shortly after. It was a motorcycle accident.
The statement jarred me. I went from believing the man was alive and possibly married to Becca to learning that he was dead in a very short time. I had no idea that he had died so tragically. Hey, I'm sorry to bring this all up. I had no idea.
Don't be. You deserve to know what's going on.
There was a moment as Becca collected her thoughts.
The thing is, I know it wasn't an accident.
She continued.
A friend of mine saw Francis at the scene that night and told me all about it. Now she's dead too.
Becca paused again.
The point I'm making is that I know better now. This was my first screw-up, the first time that Francis tricked me, and maybe I haven't completely come to terms with that yet. I'm not trying to be distant about my past with Icky or anything else, but I just don't know what to say sometimes, and it's frustrating. That's all on me, not your fault. It's complicated and, for me, it's still unresolved. So, I'm sorry if I'm sending mixed signals or not being transparent. I'll try to be better about it.
I was about to speak, but Becca touched my arm, indicating to let her finish.
So, you see, Adrian? You couldn't have known any of this. You don't need to feel sorry for bringing this up, or jealous, or any of that. The fact of the matter is that you're special to me in a way that no one ever was or ever will be. We're connected metaphysically. What really bothers me is that being around me is fundamentally just as dangerous as before, if not more, because we're connected and alone.
At that moment, I looked at the portrait of Icarus on the wall and felt a slight chill.
Follow me.
Becca stood and asked me to follow her outside. She led me to Icky's gravesite. It was on the shore just behind the lighthouse, but not immediately noticeable from the front or the road. The graveyard was small, surrounded by trees, and had about 8 visible headstones, perhaps more hidden from view. The yard had a black, metal fence and gate that was overgrown with vines.
This is it.
The headstone read, Icarus Grady Young, February 14th, 37 years ago, to November 13th, 11 months ago. I could not prove it, but I swear that the graveyard muted the wind and any sounds from the ocean. It gave me an even greater chill to visit it. Becca, on the other hand, I learned, was not bothered by the location and had slept in this graveyard before and at night.
It just kind of happened.
She explained. She said that she could connect with the dead and that it gave her peace to be on holy ground when she meditated.
The dead that you are friends with can actually protect you from the bad spirits, as long as you're sure that it is the friendly, good dead that you are connecting to.
Becca explained.
Especially in places like this. Susan, Icky's grandmother over there, can be a little bit of a handful, but she means well.
She pointed to the grave to the far left and to the rear. What motivated you to sleep here? I asked.
Well, as can happen in a relaxed state like meditation, I'd accidentally fallen asleep here a few times. It's not so bad, really.
The dead that you are friends with, I thought. Was Icky my friend? Did he approve of my being near Becca? If the two of them had broken up and she felt unresolved, were they really on good terms? I did not know. Up to that point, I'd only seen a fraction of the magic that Becca could call forth, and she didn't discuss it much unless I openly asked. For example, I watched from the window of the house one morning what could only be described as a miracle. Becca was outside kneeling down, and I wasn't sure why. I was prepared to go out to ask her, but something told me to just stay back. Stay where I was and watch from the house. Soon, I saw a small wolf approaching her, but it looked like its front paw was injured and it was limping. There was a likely scenario that led to this wolf's injury. We'd seen many animal carcasses along the way that were drained of blood and laid to waste. Becca had explained earlier that it was the mad undead that were responsible for much of it. They preferred human flesh and blood, but in the absence of it, they began to eat and drink from other animals and rarely fully consumed them. Nothing was safe. I'd seen birds, dogs, deer, reptiles, even horses. Everything was in high concentration, like a disease had hit them. The smell was just awful. Perhaps this injured wolf was one that escaped from them, but not without suffering first. Becca felt so sorry for them and cried a lot over it. She stood and approached the wolf. I should point out that Becca was wrapped in a sheet that early morning, and beneath it she was completely naked. The exception was the leafy crown I'd made for her atop her head. How did I know she was naked beneath it? I knew because in short time, she dropped that sheet aside and stepped away from it. It was still a little dark outside, but I was certain that I'd just caught a glimpse of the most beautiful woman in the world that morning. I saw Becca reach out like requesting a dance partner, and the wolf came closer to her. She petted it as she drew symbols in the dirt with her finger, and she whispered into its ear as if telling a secret. Then, she stepped back and slowly grabbed one of her daggers. Morning was what she called it, and it had a blue glow. I didn't know what her intentions were with it, but I was confused by the sight of it. Was she going to harm the wolf? Maybe her ways were stranger than I'd thought. I was incorrect. Then, I remembered her words. It's anathema, never used for cutting, and harm none. She held the blade into the flame of a nearby candle, one of 5. Then she used it to draw more symbols, in the air this time. The symbols remained glowing, also blue, and suspended in the air as she set the dagger aside again. She blew on the symbols like a bubble wand and the glowing lights vanished. She knelt to the wolf again, petting it, and it licked her face, to which she reacted with squinty eyes and a quick, audible laugh that I could hear high-pitched even from indoors. Then suddenly, the wolf was fine, fully healed and no longer limping. I never saw the change occur in the wolf, but somehow it had. The wolf was fully healed after what she'd done. It began to jump around and play, to which Becca grinned but motioned for it to calm down. The wolf complied. She began talking to the wolf as if giving it instructions, to which the wolf responded by jumping around again. Then, Becca gave in and started jumping around with it too, laughing now, rocking her head back and forth playfully. The crown fell away from her head, but she caught it in midair. Then, she tossed it into the air again, but this time it floated gently and remained suspended with sparkles all around it like little fairies dancing around it. It moved like a balloon, slowly descending, and she kept her hands outstretched and ready nearby, but only to prevent it from ever making it to the ground. Then she placed the crown back on her head. It was then that I noticed I was not the only one looking on. There were other animals in the periphery, a rabbit, a snake, and a stag. The other animals seemed to be aware of one another but were not hostile, as if Becca kept them in check and did not allow that type of rude behavior in or around her circle. I thought of the conversation we had earlier about fishing and realized that she wasn't kidding and probably could just ask fish to swim over to her, and they probably would, as her friends. What else could explain the wolf's recovery but a miracle, and what force was this that she used to make the crown float? I did not know. Whatever it was, she used a more powerful version of this concept to stop the impact of a nuclear missile right before my eyes. But as I said, she talked little of it. Becca suddenly made a lot of sense to me after seeing this. I've never seen her so happy. This is what she lived for. All she ever wanted was to be happy and to dance around naked in the woods like this morning among her friends, the animals. By then, I was sure that she was a child of the forest at heart to some degree, inside of her refined, city-dwelling and machine-friendly exterior. Her ready knowledge of protection symbols, herbs and the like were only a taste of something she must have either grown up around or rebelliously acquired and weaved into her life on her own time. She meditated often and whispered to herself when she did. Now I was seeing the fruit of it. Becca looked back to the house, and I'd responded by stepping away from the window. I was not sure at the time if she saw me, simply pretended not to have, or if I was not visible. I considered it a close call. I learned quite a bit while spying on her, but I did not always get away with it, though. In fact, I rarely did. She'd caught me once while she tinkered with her motorcycle in the early morning sunrise, but was very calm about it and simply invited me out in the playful way I'd come to expect.
Do you want to have a closer look at what I'm doing, maybe help, or would you rather keep staring at my ass from way over there? It's your choice,
she said with hardly a break in her activity. I approached, and when she looked up, she added with a playful smirk,
At least I'm dressed this time.
Encounters in the morning like this when she was working on her bike evolved into lessons with the bike as well. How it worked and how to ride it. I could again see her as a wonderful professor because she was so thorough and patient with me when she instructed me on how to operate her purring machine. She went on tangents where she became so animated and excited that I too became joyously lost in her detours, analogies, and vivid, participatory explanations. Her charisma stole me away, and it was fun to watch her go on like this. It amazed me to learn that she'd done much more than drive and learn about the bike. She'd also built it herself and referred to it as a hybrid of an all-electric Glimmer 600. For the smooth, quiet ride, she'd recently acquired a taste for, and a vintage Lee Dillon XR2. For the overall durability and power she'd first fallen in love with.
So, it's basically a rebuilt version of the discontinued Lee Dillon engine found on older models, powerful at its core, but fewer glitches and more powerful than the current engine on stock models. This one also has on-demand, all-electric capabilities. Lee Dillon doesn't make this kind of engine, which really pisses me off because I like them. Glimmer makes one, but I'm not impressed with the power, just the feel, so I took matters into my own hands and fashioned one of my own with several tweaks. We're writing the prototype.
She insisted I take some notes on the things she explained. Those notes are now incorporated into my description.
I'm just saving you the trouble. One day, you're going to want one of these too. When you do, you'll come crying to me asking about how you can fix it up to be like mine. You'll probably be spoiled by how sweet this thing is. It's what you're learning on, so don't be surprised. Take notes.
I've never been a motorcycle person, never had any interest in riding them or anything like that. Hell, I've never even learned to drive a stick-shift car. Therefore, clutch did not come naturally to me anyway. On those grounds, I was skeptical about ever wanting to own one, drive one, or understand the inner workings of one, especially since just about everyone I've known who rode them had gotten seriously injured, died, or had a close call at some point that I just couldn't stomach. Present company included. But Becca beat on, determined to show me her ways and win me over. She was going to get me into these machines. Over the course of days, I'm surprised to say it was starting to work. She stripped my fear of them away. Becca's motorcycle was a thing of beauty. It was highly modified with her own special additions and subtractions which, now examining it up close and her pointing out these things, were of different colors in a few places. She showed me that she had replaced the stock exhaust, replaced the wheels with lighter aftermarket ones, and given it tires of a more recent model from Glimmer. She replaced the clutch with one that is much easier to pull. She added steel braided brake lines on the front and back for better performance, but explained that she stuck to a brake fluid that is suitable for regular streets because she typically did not race with this bike and wouldn't get the fluid hot enough to justify a full upgrade despite the ridiculous speeds I'd seen her go. The instances when she reached those speeds were outliers. She explained that the neon purple lights emanating from the bottom of the purple and black bike were really nothing special. They were LEDs that could stand up to her somewhat abusive treatment of the bike in general. Speaking of which, Becca added what she called a crash cage, radiator cage, and a scrape bar to minimize inevitable cosmetic damage to the frame and tail section of the bike when performing her stunts. She also added stunt pegs on the subcage as well as a concave indentation on the gas tank of the bike. Around the gas tank she added a surfboard traction pad, something that, as she explained, is easily found here on the coast at one of the many board shops, to reduce friction. She said, with a faux demonstration of course, that during stunt performances she often moved up onto this part, stood on it, or it aided her in different ways. She needed to have traction. She added a special cover to the 60-tooth sprocket as well as seats especially designed for stunts. She had 12-inch solid aluminum bars with medium compound grips. Becca explained these changes she'd made over time, but was always cognizant that I would need the less complicated terms as well to fully understand why she made them or what they were. She loved to explain it. What I got from it all was that the bike was lighter, faster, environmentally cleaner, and more powerful than average for what she'd done to it, with just a splash of extra safety because of the weather in this area and her dangerous activities on it. Her explanations of various things duly supported my theory that her magical aura must extend to this machine, given her active involvement in its creation. At this point I would not be so bold as to say that I drive a motorcycle, but I at least understand how not to kill myself with one if I really need to make one move or stop, or just want to push it without trouble thanks to her directions. She said that this was what she cared most about and that I'd only improve with practice after the basics. She even explained to me how best to pick a bike back up if it is lying on its side. Her seemingly random explanations of the motorcycle's components and her demonstrations with it helped me to better understand it and her.
I just want you to focus on accelerator, clutch, and brakes, nothing else. But don't worry. You'll be doing performances in no time.
She teased. What added a special layer to the situation was that Becca could have easily abandoned or disowned me without a moment's notice on multiple occasions, because of how often she needed to make trips. She had this option, and I feared this outcome. Each time she'd left my side, she'd returned a short time later. She'd demonstrated again and again that leaving me behind was less and less likely to happen. One time she returned with a surprise.
I brought you a clarinet. On the dust jacket of your book, it says you play. So, now you can play for me.
On another occasion she went to retrieve items of her own. She said that she'd left some materials behind in Siena on the first day she found me.
Just stay here. Okay, babe? I'll be back, but don't leave the house until I return.
Each time she left I felt anxiety, but she always returned. She'd returned quickly. She'd also done this when she needed to get tools from abandoned supply stores and for other random errands. I soon learned that Becca did not like for me to leave her vicinity or supervision at all, and for good reason. They were the moments when I was most vulnerable to the things that I was not accustomed to seeing.
Journal of Dr. Rebecca T.D. Stars Aza, October 16th. I'd gone out to retrieve some items I'd left behind earlier this week. I was successful with that mission, but that isn't why I'm writing today. I'm writing about what happened when I returned to the lighthouse. I'd normally be overjoyed to have found what I was looking for so early and be returning to my place of safety after being out where the mad undead roamed, but I had a different feeling this day. I slowed my bike to a stop and flipped up my visor. Something was wrong. The front door to the house was wide open, but why? I instantly became concerned about Adrian. Where was he? Did he know the door was open? He shouldn't have been outside. I specifically asked him not to leave the house for any reason until I returned, just as a precaution. So why was the door open? I didn't like it at all. I parked out front and removed my helmet as I approached the door in a cautious yet impatient way, looking about for signs of Adrian, but finding none. I entered, dropping my supply bag and helmet, and looked around. Adrian wasn't in the living room where I'd normally expect to find him. I checked the kitchen and my bedroom, both of which had their entrances in my line of sight, but I found no one with a closer inspection, not even a note or sign of where he might be. I looked downstairs, but no one was there. Then I really started to panic. Had Francis entered this lighthouse anyway, despite my protections? I went back outside and looked around. I did a miniature search around the property, the shed, the tower, and the yard around back. I looked up the road again, in case I'd missed him when I returned. I found no signs of him. "Adrian, are you out here?" I shouted. There was no reply. I went back inside. It was the most uncomfortable feeling imaginable, the thought that he could be gone. It was like it was happening all over again a year later. "Adrian, I need you to come here," I exclaimed, this time in no particular direction, almost choking up as I did. In the past year, since learning of Francis, I knew it was a mistake to leave anyone I knew without protection or to generally leave them alone for too long. If I did, I could expect a tragedy in those few moments. Had this happened again? I was ready to cry as I looked around thinking, not again, not again. I was sure it was happening again, except that this time I knew better. But how? I thought. There were protections in place this time. Redundant protections. I prepared to go back outside and expand my search beyond the property, but before I did, I stopped dead in my tracks, and so did my heart. Adrian was at the door. There are not words to describe the range of emotions that rushed over me. First, I felt shocked because I did not expect someone to be standing there and heard no one coming. Then I felt relief for seeing that Adrian was here, alive and okay. Finally, I felt angry, which I did not expect, and that feeling lasted. "Hey!" I marched right up to him and shoved him. In hindsight, I shoved him a little harder than I'd intended to. "What the hell are you trying to do, Adrian? Where did you go, and why didn't you tell me?" I was so worried.
Down by the water. I wasn't far.
Adrian answered, as if leaving the house was totally fine, and I'd never said a word about why he shouldn't leave the lighthouse. "Well, I hope you know how to cast a circle of protection strong enough to be down by the fucking water, because I sure as hell didn't make one for you. You can't just leave like that without clearing it with me first," I replied and crossed my arms. "You understand that, right? We talked about this." We met eyes for a moment, but Adrian asked a question that really bothered me.
Did you need me for something?
I gaped and uncrossed my arms. How offensive. Need you for something? What the fuck kind of question is that? The door was wide open, and you weren't here, staccato in my voice. I needed you to stay in the fucking house. I thought something terrible happened. I looked everywhere and couldn't find you. Why didn't you answer? I did not expect an answer to the question, but instead went to my point. I cannot protect you if you're going to do whatever you want. I tell you where I'm going every time I leave, and I have a well-thought-out plan for each outing. I need you to do the same, and I need to know what that plan is, or none of this works. I gestured between us.
Didn't you call me for protection?
No, I called you for assistance. There's a difference. I protect you. If you're outside the sanctuary, you're my responsibility. You can't assist me if you don't let me protect you. Look, I know you're an adult and used to doing things your way. I get that, but this is a different situation, and it gets dangerous very fast. You won't see the danger coming. No one ever does. We had an agreement, and what you did today was really fucking irresponsible. We talked about what's happened to the people who didn't listen to me before, right? This house is protected, and I need you here. I can't make that any clearer for you. Adrian tried to take a step closer to me. I wasn't sure why, but I didn't want him to. Instead, I gave him another push. No, I'm feeling disrespected right now. I don't appreciate it, and it's unacceptable. This is a problem we can't have. Tell me that it won't happen again, or we're done, I said. What did I mean by done? I could have meant any number of things at that moment. Done enjoying each other's company, done trusting one another, done talking, the list goes on, but you get the idea. He did apologize, but he had more to say. It started with this.
I know I fucked up and that won't happen again.
Yeah.
But ask me why I was out there in the first place.
Why?
This might sound strange, but I thought I heard you calling out to me. I thought you did come back, but I'd missed you somehow. I thought maybe you were down by the water. Then, I could have sworn I saw you down there near the beach. You were sitting and then you stood and turned. You started jogging back my way and I kept walking toward you, but then I heard you calling back at the house, which I thought was strange. When I looked back at the beach, I didn't see you there anymore either, so I came back this way. That's when I got here.
Adrian, look at me. I grabbed his shoulders and gradually moved my hands to the sides of his face. I wasn't by the water.
But
I'm right here. I just got here. I left just like I told you that I would and came right back. I entered the house, crossed this threshold with blessed salt. I never deviated. I never do. I never went down to the water. I shook my head. What you heard and what you saw by the water was not me. Do you understand? It took a second for that statement to sink in for him, but I believe it did. Do not ever leave my circles, I reiterated. I'll never ask you to leave them unless we're leaving together. This is exactly what I'm talking about. I need you to stay inside my circles. Then there was the shift in my thoughts. I was so glad he was okay. Here. I grabbed Adrian and held him so tight afterwards.
Journal of Adrian Eckenrode, October 19th. Becca was 100% pissed at me, but, as usual, she was also 100% correct. She held the overarching view that there were few, if any, scenarios where leaving her protective circles was acceptable. The voice I'd heard by the water was perhaps the first of several subtle and haunting experiences for us that spelled trouble, but at first, I thought little of it and that maybe it was just a figment of my imagination. Only when Becca discussed it in a different light did it occur to me that the voice may have been a failed attempt by Frances to lure me away from her protection at a moment of opportunity. This I cannot confirm, but gave me an uncomfortable feeling in hindsight. It meant that we must have been monitored if Frances was able to identify such a window of opportunity. If Becca had returned only a few minutes later than she did, that ghost masquerading as her would have met me on the beach and I would have willingly thrown myself into its arms. I'd have been no more. In that respect, staying in her circle would have been the correct course of action. Becca knew what she was doing and how to protect herself during encounters with Frances as well as the mad undead. But I did not. She could defy the rules when needed. I should not, otherwise I make things worse. I'd just become so used to the safety of her circles and her watchful ways that it was easy to forget how resourceful and dangerous Frances and the other creatures could be. This was my first frightening experience with Frances, and compared to what came later, it was only a mild one. Eventually, I sat with her. It was interesting. Even after I believed we'd gotten the situation out of our systems and started talking about other things, like what she'd seen during her brief outing, she abruptly broke from that conversation to reiterate her frustrations.
If I ever come back here and can't find you after everything that we've talked about today, you'd better have a damn good reason for it. Disappearing is not okay with me. Don't let it happen again and do not leave my circles.
Her point was clear to me the first time she made it, but I was sure she wasn't letting that situation go anytime soon. One could be tempted to say that she was overreacting, but then she'd seen the outcomes of these types of situations before, what even 10 minutes of lapse security could yield, and was no longer negotiating on them. From then on, I did not leave her sight again unless she asked. Becca watched me so much closer from then on, but I think that it's important to say that she's watched me closely from the beginning. In many instances where I'd fallen asleep, I'd awakened and found her close by, watching over me in some fashion. She'd look up from whatever she was doing and give me a tender, short-lived grin before returning to her task. Other times she'd just be locked in a stare at me. She'd have her legs crossed and a burning cigarette between her fingers, but for the longest time she would not take a drag, as if she were consumed with her thoughts or admiring me like a newly acquired work of art. It would seem she was about to speak sometimes but didn't. Instead, she exhaled smoke or went the extra mile and blew perfect smoke rings, which I found amusing. In sum, Becca continued to treat me like a part of her world after letting me read her great-grandfather's journal. There was much to be afraid of and much to enjoy about being with her. I can only hope that she enjoyed my company as much as I did hers. This was the place to take our minds off the macabre, or so I thought.
This story is 100% original and written by a human, yours truly, the author. AI was not used to write, prompt, organize, or otherwise generate this story. This audiobook edition was, however, created using licensed text-to-voice software with a lifelike casting and intonation manually adjusted and refined line by line by me, an art in and of itself. The theme music was written and produced by Kiss the Widow. If you like what you found so far, please like and follow, subscribe, and share. Also, please be sure to check out my socials.